Comparing cities, it is so hard to do because every city has something that is wonderful, that they love, that everybody agrees that this is amazing. Seattle, it's got Space Needle, it's got some art places, kind of polished, it's a global city. You can think to yourself, what could be better? Is there anything better? Even in Puget Sound or the South Sound? Well, we're gonna make a comparison between Seattle and Tacoma, and we're gonna use a little bit different grid of how to evaluate, but which city actually offers a better lifestyle, quality of life, fewer trade-offs, and maybe just a little bit better value. So let's explore that today. Tacoma versus Seattle. Drop in the elbow. Which one's the better place? Somebody's got to win.
So whether you're thinking about moving to the Pacific Northwest or you're just curious about these two towns, breakdown we're going to give you is going to be better than any relocation brochure that you can find. We're Joe and Charity. We are local experts, realtors here in the Pacific Northwest, and we help people just like you every day where the best fit is for them in the Puget Sound area.
So we're going to start with cost of living because that really is on all of our minds. And I got to let you know, spoiler alert, Seattle is not going to be winning this one.
Seattle is definitely more expensive than Tacoma. In fact, the median house price is $850,000. But when you think of buying a house in Seattle, you really don't think that that's the price you're going to be able to afford.
No, and as a matter of fact, I work with a lot of investors. What they're hoping for is to buy a fixer-upper in the $600,000 to $800,000 price range so that they could turn around and sell it for well over $1 million. There's just not a lot of inventory that fits underneath those categories.
And it's not just that. The cost of living overall is 50% higher in Seattle than the national average. So yeah, it's a little pricey.
Sticker shock goes beyond just your home price, goes to every other part of your life. Your taxes are going to be a little bit higher, food's going to cost a little bit more, gas is going to be a little bit more expensive. Now don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things that I love about Seattle, but mainly it's an hour away and I can go watch a Mariners game. That's what I love about Seattle.
But now let's look at Tacoma. Tacoma's median home price is quite a bit lower, $500,000. And of course, there are neighborhoods in Seattle that have lower priced homes and neighborhoods in Tacoma that have lower priced homes. And you might not be looking for the lowest priced neighborhood, but you're going to be comparative in kind of what you get. And it's going to be about $300,000 difference.
Yeah, for sure. Matter of fact, yesterday I was in downtown Tacoma showing a client a wonderful condo. Now this condo was right around $800,000, but it was on the water, overlooked the harbor, had a view of Mount Rainier, and literally the price tag was like, oh my gosh, this is affordable, because I know in downtown Seattle for a comparable view, you're well over $1 million into your $2 million range to get the same type of home, because this thing was gorgeous. 20-foot ceilings, a loft, it was amazing. So there is a big difference between the two for sure.
In addition, the cost of living in Tacoma is about 20% above a national average, which is quite a significant difference from the Seattle 50%. So next, let's give you some more information specifically on the housing market and what affects those housing prices.
Because of the tech industry that Seattle is known for, those high-tech jobs are usually higher paying. And because of that, people are willing to spend more, and that has driven up home prices, condo prices, and a lot of things throughout the Seattle region. Now, what goes along with those high-tech jobs is market volatility. And here's what I mean by that. You'll see things in the news, Amazon's laying off, this company is doing this, and it creates an uncertainty, especially if you find yourself house poor, which is a difficult place to be in for sure.
That volatility is also affected quite a bit by the ups and downs of Seattle. Just being Seattle. There's a little bit of drama that happens in Seattle. And if you watch on the news, you hear Seattle mentioned once in a while. And so the volatility also has to do not just with the tech jobs, but also with just Seattle and the way it is.
Now, because of Seattle's population growth, they focused on increasing density throughout the city. So they're splitting lots up into smaller sizes, stacking them right next to each other. And it really gives this tight, cramped feelings at times and in certain parts of the city. So honestly, if that's something you're into, Seattle might be great. However, in most people, they like to be able to look out their window in the morning and not necessarily see their neighbor 4 feet away looking back at them.
Or handing them a cup
of coffee or saying, hey, where's the sugar? That doesn't necessarily work for everyone.
On Tacoma, you're going to see some differences in the housing market as well. Of course, Tacoma is also a big city, and so there are going to be dense areas, condos and things like that. You're also going to have some very large lots with some big, beautiful houses, because those big houses have been around for quite a long time.
Yes.
And nobody has subdivided them all. The architecture in Tacoma is going to be varied from those beautiful craftsman homes beautiful early century homes to modern condos, similar to the things that you can find in Seattle. So if you're looking for an old home or a new home, you're going to have options in both cities. It's just going to be more affordable in Tacoma and with more space around you.
That's right.
Tacoma's market has not been as volatile as Seattle. In fact, Tacoma gets the people that are wanting to move out of Seattle because it's the next closest area. If you are working in Seattle, you still can commute. And we'll talk about commute times in a little bit. It really is the catch-all for people wanting to move out of Seattle and still have an urban environment and be close.
Now, like we've already alluded to, one of the big draws of Seattle is a very strong, robust economy. However, Tacoma's got a lot of things going on that you're probably going to want to know.
Let's talk about Seattle's economy first. We all know that Microsoft is there, Amazon is there, some really huge corporations that employ so many people. And besides that, there are all the other mid-sized companies that want to be around these other companies, that want to be in the same tech and forward-thinking space. So you've got other industries that just blossom in this area. And because of that, there's plenty of opportunities for jobs. If you can't get one in Seattle, you might get one in Redmond or you might get one in Bellevue, but overall it's all in the same general area.
Now, when it comes to Tacoma, it's a little bit more diversified and to some degree, it's a little bit more industrial. Now, that is not to say that there's not high-tech jobs, nor is it to say that that's the entirety of the community, because there are a lot of people who work from home in companies that are in Seattle and enjoy all the other benefits Tacoma has to offer at a much more affordable price.
And then just south of Tacoma, you have Joint Base Lewis McChord, which is JBLM, and it is an enormous military base that employs so many people. And so you always have the robust economy that comes along with that.
And there's a lot of ancillary businesses that support our military around the Tacoma area, and that helps a ton with job opportunities and diversifying the economy in the Tacoma area.
In fact, quite a few people who are stationed at JBLM and end up having to go somewhere else in their career plan on coming back. And when they do, a lot of them start businesses and are there to employ other people and help our growing economy. So no matter where you live, getting around is going to be important. So let's talk a little bit about commute and traffic.
Wah, wah, wah. Here's where I can honestly say from years of experience, Seattle's roughed sometimes. And what I mean by sometimes is every day. That's what I mean by sometimes. Now, granted, there are days where there's sporting events and it just becomes convoluted on the freeway. Commute times in and out of Seattle every morning during the week are basically a hot mess. I was listening to the radio this morning while I was showing houses, and the commute time into Seattle was an hour and a half. I was like, holy smokes, that is not for me. So just be aware that if you're moving to Seattle, you're probably going to be living in one of the suburbs or downtown, but any way you slice it, your commute times are going to be pretty heavy, especially during main traffic time.
Yeah, it is a little bit life altering. Like, you have to plan. We've talked to some friends who have recently moved from the Seattle area, and they talk about having to plan ahead when they're doing anything. You have to look at what the game schedules are.
Yeah.
You have to look maybe a couple hours ahead at what the traffic looks like, just in case an accident happened, and you have to plan ahead. To go around, sometimes you don't have an option to get around because the only way to something is one way to get there. So it definitely takes a little bit more effort to live in Seattle when it comes to commute and traffic.
Now, when it comes to Tacoma, the commute is far easier. If you have to be on I-5, you're going to be dealing with the same type of issues you have in Seattle, although not as bad. But the flip side is getting around the city, if you don't need to go on the freeway during peak traffic times, is very easy. It's convenient. There's not as many people on the roads. It really does make it easy to get around a city in a timely fashion.
And you do have the option in both cities to take public transportation. In Seattle and Tacoma, you've got a bus system. You also have the Sounder train, which goes all throughout the Seattle area and does come down to Tacoma. So if you decide to live in Tacoma and commute up there, you are able to do that without having to worry about the freeway. So just keep that in mind. Some people prefer to just forget about traffic, read a book, and get there when you get there. And that's an option for both places.
Obviously, we're not spending all of our time commuting to our jobs. There is a life that we're trying to live outside of just our work environment. So let's jump into that. What really is the vibe of each place, and what does each one have to offer?
I would describe Seattle as vibrant, fast-paced, and a little bit pretentious.
I laugh because it's true. That was a genuine response.
There is something called Seattle Freeze, which we've talked about in some of our videos, and it can be a thing. Of course, you're going to be able to find some friends if you move there, but the general overall feel of Seattle is, I'm okay, and I might not need anybody else. Everybody's doing their thing, moving fast, and it might take a little bit to just get to know people.
Now, it does have so many things going on, and I can understand why people would feel so excited for themselves to live there. And it is also well known that Seattle freeze is a thing.
Beyond the Seattle freeze, you're going to get a feel of highly educated and career-driven, which are wonderful. The overall vibe of Seattle is great. It's a wonderful city to live in, or else there wouldn't be that many people who are living there.
And we like it ourselves as well, but I mainly like it just to go watch the Mariners hopefully win some games, but that's another story. Now, Tacoma, on the other hand, is called Grit City, and for a reason. It does have a little bit of a gritty, like they're going after it, that you're working, you're getting things accomplished, you're chasing your dreams. Might not be as easy as maybe other people, but they're going to get through it. Part of that, I believe, comes from its industrial roots as a city. And that's not to say that Tacoma doesn't have some very nice places, and the people in Tacoma aren't highly educated, because both of them are true. Wonderful, highly educated, hardworking, with lots of charm and charisma. But it does have that backbone of being just a touch more on the gritty side.
In addition to that, the pace of Tacoma is a little bit slower, a little bit more laid back, a little bit more relaxed, and lots more space around you. So there's a feeling when you're in a tight city, imagine New York, and then there's a feeling when you're in a city that's not as tight. So the density of the city definitely has to do also with the vibe.
The difference in vibe between the two cities also plays out then in how you recreate. So let's take a look at the activities that you can find yourself doing in both cities for a comparison.
Seattle, of course, offers all the big things. We've got the Mariners, which Joe references all the time. We've got the Seahawks, we've got the Kraken, we have Seattle Storm. We have all of the activities that happen at those centers. So not only are sporting events happening there, but there are big name concerts and all kinds of seasonal events that are happening. And so there is quite a lot going on that you can get involved in. Seattle also famously has Seattle Center with the Space Needle, the Glass Museum, and Seattle Art Museum to top it off. And beyond that, smaller event venues and activities that happen all throughout the year. As we mentioned previously, getting to these events in Seattle takes a little bit more effort, because when you've got a huge event, you've got a huge amount of people commuting there. So you're going to get to spend at this fun event and the amount of time it's going to take you to get there.
That's right. Now, Tacoma's entertainment is going to be more local and more accessible.
Yeah, starting with the downtown Tacoma area, there you have a lot going on. There's a museum district. So you've got the art museum, you've got the history museum, you've got the glass blowing museum, you have a children's museum, you have a car museum. There is so much to do if you love museums. And right next to that is the theater district, and those aren't movie theaters. That's like Pantages Theater and the Rialto Theater. There are constantly performances throughout the year coming to both of those theaters. And as Joe mentioned, it's very accessible here. You don't really have to plan ahead to get somewhere and to leave, because the traffic isn't that bad. And in fact, if you happen to live in some of the areas of North Tacoma, there's a light rail system that is free, and you can just jump on and it takes you right down to that area, which is super great.
Now, we understand that some people's entertainment is not going to museums or shows. They'd rather get outdoors. So let's talk about that, because there are lots of great opportunities outdoors for both cities.
Seattle is located very close to Snoqualmie Pass. So if you are into skiing and hiking and snowshoeing and snowmobiling and just being up in the mountains, that's going to be quick access. Once you get past the traffic, you will be right up on top of the mountain enjoying all that. Besides that, Seattle has some wonderful parks. They have an incredible waterfront area, which they have just redone, and it is amazing, and it makes you just want to go spend time there all the time. So there's plenty to do in the outdoor regions of the Seattle area. As we said, might take you a little bit longer to get there.
Tacoma has some really great parks as well, and one of them is Point Defiance Park, which is over 780 acres, which has got a little waterfall in it, little hiking trails. It also has an amazing zoo. So there is a ton going on there that you could spend all day and probably a couple days exploring and enjoying all the beauty that is there for sure.
And on top of that, Tacoma is very close to Mount Rainier. So Mount Rainier obviously is a national park, and when you get up there, you have unlimited trails and beauty to explore. And as we were mentioning, Snoqualmie Pass is just up the way. You're a little bit further away than you were in Seattle, but really not that much further because of the Highway 18 cutoff. It's right up there Federal Way.
Our final topic that is on everyone's mind, but it's something we don't always talk about, about, and that is crime and safety.
So obviously with any big city, there's going to be an issue with crime and safety, and they're a little bit different between Seattle and Tacoma. You may have read stories in the news about Seattle and the issues that it has figuring out what to do with the unhoused population, and there are differing opinions, and so that means sometimes enough doesn't get done, and a significant amount of the crime that happens in Seattle has to do with that. Now, they are working towards better solutions, and we always suggest that when you are considering moving to an area, you consult crime maps to do your own due diligence to find out if this area is going to be an area you feel comfortable in.
Now, Tacoma does have a little bit of a history and reputation, and I think it's a little bit of a bad rap because years ago, there were some spots in Tacoma that were rough. Matter of fact, we lived there, helped out with a nonprofit in a very dangerous place in our early 20s when we were young and foolish. Since that time, though, Tacoma has transformed itself. It is an amazing place that has really reinvented itself for its citizens, a wonderful city for them to live in.
In fact, last weekend, we were in the neighborhoods that we used to live in when we did nonprofit work, and it's completely different. We're actually quite blown away. We spent quite a few years not in Tacoma, in other areas. And so when we came back to the area and realized how much Tacoma had done for itself, we were quite amazed.
Could not be more impressed with how they developed the city, made it a wonderful place to live, because I think it's absolutely fantastic.
Now with Seattle and Tacoma, you're going to have some neighborhoods that have higher crime and some neighborhoods that have lower crime. Once again, we encourage you to look on those crime maps. And one thing that's really important to do when you do that is to compare it with an area that you have lived in so that you can see how they compare, because sometimes when you look at them, it looks a little bit out of whack until you compare it to an area that you're comfortable living in.
So there you have it. There's the comparison of Seattle and Tacoma. And if you haven't caught it yet, we lean a little bit more towards Tacoma because I think it's reinvented himself. It's a wonderful place. Like I said, I've been showing clients this past few weeks, homes up there, and every time I'm just amazed. The view of the water, amazed the view of Rainier, amazed about how convenient it is to get around. So I think, especially then with the trump card being cost of living, it's something you should at least consider if you're moving into the area. With the significant added bonus of it being so much cheaper to live in than Seattle.
If the lifestyle and amenities of homes in this area have caught your attention, then of course we are here to help. Just reach out on the number below or feel free to email us in the link in the description. And if you found this video helpful, then you're going to want to keep watching because the next one is going to give you the most affordable places to live outside of Seattle.